Hey, class. What's up? Dr. Danju here again. Today, tonight, I am coming to you from Guyana, my hometown. Yes, I came here to spend some time with my mom, all right? And as you can see in the background, I'm at our hotel, high up, you know, enjoying the view, enjoying the life. And as you can see right now, things are kind of quiet. But on Monday, they have matrimony. That's how I say it. Anyways, all it is carnival, and they are about to gyrate, and they are about to have a blast. So the question is today that we're dealing with is hypothesis testing, and how do you test hypothesis testing? Hypothesis testing is based on some kind of claim. So I can make a claim like, man, Guyanese are going to show up to this carnival and gyrate their bodies at, let's say, 30 rotations per second. Hmm, They're going to go fast. They're going to get down on it. They're going to gyrate themselves. But the thing is, it's nice to make claims. It is nice to make statements, but can you prove it? Today, that is what we're going to be doing with hypothesis testing. We're going to take claims and check to see, can you gyrate more than 30 revolutions in 1 minute, or in 30 seconds, or in 1 second? Can you do it? And can you do it in more than? Can you say it is less than? Or can you say that it is? It is some kind of claim. It is some kind of statement that the researcher is trying to test. So today, as we get into hypothesis testing, we're going to be looking at claims. We're going to be looking at statements. We're going to be testing to see, is it less than, which represents a left tail test? Is it greater than, which represents a right tail test? Or is it is, which represents a two-tailed test? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my hotel room, all right? And we're going to get into this lesson today on hypothesis testing. All right, so follow me along on this. Mhm. All right, you know what I do? I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to see me with my head on a swivel. I only have uh, my laptop here today, so my head is not going to be moving as much. But give me a second. Let me get my PowerPoint up and going, and we're going to see how to test hypothesis testing. When we're making claims, we're making statements. We're making these claims, we're making these statements using sample data. Ultimately, we're using these samples to understand the population parameters. All right, so here is our sample data. Most times we're dealing with some kind of average, all right, some kind of variance or some kind of standard deviation. Today's focus is going to be when we're making claims, we're making statements. We're making these claims, we're making these statements using sample data. Ultimately, we're using these samples to understand the population parameters. All right, so here is our sample data. Most times we're dealing with some kind of average, all right, some kind of variance or some kind of standard deviation. Today's focus is going to be on the samples average. Is the samples average, let's say, less than the population's average? Is the sample average greater than the population's average? Is the sample, it is, which means it is exactly the same, or there's difference, there's a statistical difference between the sample average and the population's average. All right. So let's do a quick review. In chapters 8, we talked about confidence intervals. Let's say we were dealing with 95% of our data. That is the shaded area right up in here. Well, we're going to be using the same concept to talk about hypothesis testing. Can we look at our data and see what we're confident that this data should be saying? But is there overwhelming evidence that is not what this data is saying? So, in this area right here would be considered our null hypothesis. This is our H0. So if, when we do our calculations, the statistical test falls anywhere inside of this boundary right here, it will be considered the null hypothesis, that the null hypothesis is true. If it were to fall anywhere in the outer tips, we will consider it to be false. The null hypothesis is no longer true based on your sample data, right? So a perfect example of this, like I said, if we show up to Guyana and you are a carnival person and you can do your thing in 30 seconds or more, then you're a carnival person. But if you can't, man, so the status quo is that it's going to be equals to or less than 30. I mean, just as a hypothetical example. But ultimately, it is based on some kind of claim. All right. So first off, when we're dealing with hypothesis testing, I want you guys to listen out for the claim. The claim actually shows up in the alternative hypothesis. The claim is, right, it's going to be not equals to. All right, so we're going to test to see if it's not equals to. We can also test to see if it's less than. We can also test to see if it's greater than. We're going to be looking at the claim. So I always want to talk about hypothesis testing, all these topics that we're talking about from a Christian worldview perspective. All right. Well, what we're going to do is listen to one of the stories, and I'm going to be using the story of Job. And as you're listening to the story of Job, I want you to hear what God's statement is, what we believe to be true, what is the null hypothesis. All right. And then I want you to hear the alternative hypothesis. What does Satan say is true? And then we're going to test to see which one is true or which one is not. So I need you to follow along on this. So remember, what God says would represent the null hypothesis. What Satan says would represent the alternative hypothesis. And once we get our result, we either accept or reject the null hypothesis. All right? So let's get into this. So if your dot falls somewhere on here when we test it, within this border right here, it will be considered do not reject what you believe to be true. But if your dot, your statistical test, falls on the outer tips, if it's a two-tailed test out here, you would reject what you believe to be true. All right. So listen to this story, and I hope this makes sense to you. But once again, when you're listening to this story, I want you to hear what does God say about Job? And then I want you to hear the alternative. What does Satan say about Job? And then from the storyline, I want you to tell who actually won, who actually made the correct statement. Was it God, the null hypothesis, or was it Satan, the alternative hypothesis? Follow me along on this. All right.
Job. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where did you come from?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it." And the Lord said to Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man? Satan said, He only trusts you and fears you because you have your hedge of protection around him. If you take all of that stuff away from him, he will curse you to your face. Job had no idea that this conversation was happening in heaven. And God said to Satan, You know what? Let's test your theory. Go ahead. All I ask is that you do not kill Job. Satan went after Job with everything that he got. He took away his sons and his daughters. He turned his friends against him. It was a disaster all around. Job lost everything. Job went to God and said, Why? Why? What is happening? I can't understand what is going on here. God, why? Job even got to the point where he said, A man is born. Let that day be darkness. Let it be darkness. Why? Job even had 4 friends that came to him and said, Guess what? God is just. It must be that you did something wrong, Job. It must be. Job said to them, No, it's not that I did anything wrong. I'm innocent. I did not do anything wrong. You guys got to believe me. I did not do anything wrong. But they still persisted and said, Yep, it must be that you did something wrong. God is just. God is fair. It must be. Job said, No, I did nothing wrong. But in it all, Job, even though he felt like God let him go, and he screamed and yelled, ah, he still trusted in God 100. He kept believing in God. All of a sudden, God started providing him all that he lost. Every single thing that he lost, God replaced it double. He got double for his trouble. We may not understand it all, but we can know and believe that God is in control of it all, and we can trust him 100.
Perfect. So imagine God is having a conversation in heaven with Satan, and God says to Satan that Job is a righteous and an upright man. That is the null hypothesis. God says it, we would expect it to be true. But in business statistics, we don't just take things that we expect to be true and just always think that that thing is true. We test it out. Satan came with the alternative. God said he was righteous and upright. Satan said, Nah, he's not righteous and upright. The only reason why he is because you got your hedge of protection around him. Now, here's some food for thought. How are you as a leader? If you tell your subordinate, if you tell someone who is lower than you something, do you expect them to just take your word for it? Or will you allow them to test it out? If I was God and Satan had come into my presence, into my throne, into the place I rule, I created him, and he was to basically object to what I was saying in front of everyone else, me personally, you'd have been gone, right? You would have been crushed. You would have been like stepped upon. You know what I mean? But listen to what God did. We're using data and information to help us make informed decisions. God didn't decide to crush Satan. God said, go test your theory. He went after Job with everything that he got, but God told him not to kill him, right? And in the end, Job couldn't understand what was actually happening, but Job kept believing in God. It was to the point where his wife was like, Yo, bro, curse God and die. And Job was like, Nah, babe, you can't do that. I love him too much. Anyways, in the end, Job got double for his trouble. Job did not trust God because God had his hedge of protection around him. He really believed in God. So when Satan tested, he found that Job actually believed in God. And God provided Job double for his trouble. So if we were to do a hypothesis test, we would say in this instance that we will not reject, do not reject the null hypothesis. Why? Because what God was saying was absolutely true. Job was righteous and upright. The alternative, in essence, was incorrect. Satan was like, because you have your hedge of protection, that's why he loves you. And what Satan found out is like, nah, man, that is not true. So today, what we're going to be talking about is how to look at and listen to claims, how to write these claims, the basic principles of hypothesis testing, all right, how to conduct it, how to test it for a known, unknown, and a prediction. Let's get into this lesson for today. Once again, we're dealing with data, something that we're actually collecting. This is not guesswork. This is what the data is actually saying. So what we're going to do is take data from a sample. And don't forget, in business statistics, we take a sample of 30 or more data points. All right. So we can get a nice bell-shaped curve kind of data set, right? But in our data, this unshaded area right here is the H0, what we expect to be true. What is the status quo? All right. The outer tips is the alternative hypothesis, what we expect to be false. All right. What separates what is true from what is false is your critical values. You guys are going to see things like Z crit, T crit, F crit, whatever crit, those are your critical boundaries that separates what is true, what is the status quo, what is the historical um, evidence compared to what is not, the outer tips. So when you see crit, you should know those are your critical boundaries. Yeah, yeah. All right. So now that we kind of got a basic idea, let's give you guys some more information. The way we test it is we use a z-stat, a t-stat, or a p-value to determine if it's true or not true. This statistical value, these calculations will show somewhere up on this number line right here when we got our sample. If it falls right here, you would say do not reject the null hypothesis. Based on your sample, it is still showing that what you expect to be true is still true. Yeah, yeah. If it were to fall on the outer tips, right, you would say, nah, man, what we thought was true is no longer true. Based on this sample, there's overwhelming evidence that whatever you thought was true is no longer true, especially dealing with this sample right here. So we're going to be looking at the z-stat p-value. It is two different formulas, right? And it's going to show you if it's do not reject or if it is reject. Yeah, yeah. Once we get into it, hopefully it will make more sense as we get into the homework assignments. All right. Here's something that you'll need to know, but once again, as you do it more, it will make more sense to you. If your p-value, if your probability value is less than your alpha values are your outer tips, right? If your p-value is less than your alpha value, then you would reject the null hypothesis. It is not true what the null we thought was true, or what the historical data said it was. It is no longer that. If your p-value is greater than or equal to your alpha value, then do not reject the null hypothesis. All right. Now, please understand there are three ways to write hypothesis tested. All right. The first way, equals to, not equals to, right? Here's your null hypothesis. Here's your alternative hypothesis. Let's say it is equal to 30. Equal to 30, this is your area right here. It represents two tails. It represents a left tail and a right tail. Please keep that in mind. If it says less than or equals to or greater than, this represents a right tail test only. Only this outer tip is what we're testing against. Yeah, yeah. How would you know that it's just this outer tip? It will say greater than. Yeah, yeah. Or the claim would be it is more than, it is increasing, it is above. That will represent a right tailed test. If you had seen in the alternative less than, it would just represent a left tailed test. All right. So you will hear the claim like, man, it is less than 30, or it is um, um, it is reduced by 30. Something to, or it's decreasing by 30. Any claim that makes that kind of statement, it represents just a left-tailed test. If you see two-tail, it's something like it is or it differs. That represents a two-tailed test. All right, I know I've said a lot, but let's keep this thing pushing. We're going to be showing you some different calculations. If you know your population standard deviation, we're going to be showing you how to use, give me a second, this formula right here. This formula tells where on that number line your dot will fall. All right. So if you know your population standard deviation, you see it inside the formula, we would use this formula right here. If you don't know your population standard deviation, we're going to be using a t-stat. So remember, z was a standard number. Now, if we don't know it, if we just know the sample standard deviation, we will use a t-stat value. All right, good, good, good. If we're dealing with proportion, we will show you guys how to use this formula right here if you know your proportion value. This is your z-stat value, right? And if you know your x value, we will use this formula to find that point. All right, so let's give you some brief information about hypothesis testing, and then we'll get into the homework for today. Note to self. Hypothesis testing can be used to determine whether a statement about the value of a population parameter should or should not be rejected. There are many things in life that we believe to be true. Whether we believe it to be true or not, in business statistics, we always have to test it. All right. So some of you guys would say, hey, my mama said that this is true. Great. But in business statistics, whether your mama said it, whether your papa said it, whether someone you trust said it, whether your boss said it, you always have to test it. It may or may not be rejected. It may or may not be true. Here's a note to self. The true part represents your null hypothesis. The H0 represents your null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is either HA or H1. Both of these are basically the same thing. Some books like to put H1, some books like to put HA, right? Why they put H1? Because this one is 0, then it goes up to 1. Ones and zeros. Hopefully you know anything about technology. That would make sense. But besides the point, the A represents alternative hypothesis. All right, so just please know that these two are the same. All right, so we got our HO and HA, two competing ideas. Which one is true? All right, so here's the question. Is H0 the null or is it the alternative? Hopefully, you're saying, man, that's the null hypothesis. That's what we expect to be true. That is what we expect is the status quo. That is what, we're looking to test and see, yo, man, that's what the historical data is actually saying. That is your null hypothesis. All right. Developing the null and alternative hypothesis is not always easy. All right. Care must be taken to structure the hypotheses appropriately. All right. In our class, we're going to be taking a lot of time to work on the alternative hypothesis. When we're setting it up, yes, I know you should start off with what you believe to be true first. But in our class, the way we're teaching this is listen to the claim. The claim is represented by the alternative hypothesis. Correct hypothesis formulation will take practice. So the more we start going into the homework and I start telling you certain triggers, the more it's going to start making sense to you how to write these hypotheses. All right. So the alternative hypothesis, all right, is what the researcher is actually testing for. Many applications of hypothesis testing involves an attempt to gather evidence in support of a researcher's hypothesis. Man, people in Guyana are going to gyrate more than 30 revolutions per second. Whatever it is, that is what the researcher is trying to test. Satan said, man, Job only loves you because you got your hedge of protection around him. Test it out. That shows up in the alternative. The conclusion that the research hypothesis is true is made if the sample data provides sufficient evidence, overwhelming evidence to show that the null hypothesis can be rejected. So if what the alternative is saying is true, then we will reject the null hypothesis. We reject what we believe to be true. All right, good, good, good. So here's a good example. All right. The mean monthly cell phone bill in this city is. So when you hear is, this represents a two-tailed test. This is the claim. This is the statement. Now think about this from a rational perspective. Is a monthly cell phone bill $42? Yeah or nah? All right. Now, whether yours is yes or no, we still have to test it. So this is why the claim is that the mean, the average monthly cell phone bill is $42. Right now, I think it's probably even less because a lot of companies are trying to do stuff for like $25. Yeah, yeah, but times are changing. Who knows? All right, here's another example. The proportion of adults in this city with cell phones is 68%. Now let's think about this rationally. Do you think that only 68% of adults have phones? Once again, whether you believe it or not, you still have to test it because it says it will represent a two-tailed test, right? So we're listening to the claim for whether it is a right tail, left tail, or a two-tailed test. All right, good, good. Here's a note to self. When we're writing the null hypothesis, it is always based on the population parameters, those Greek letters. Yeah, yeah. It is never based on the sample data. It is based on the population parameters. All right, good, 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 good. All right. In the null hypothesis, begin with the assumption that the null is true. It is the status quo. It is what the historical data is saying. All right. Similar to the notion of innocence until proven guilty, the null hypothesis is the status quo. It is the historical data, is what we believe to be true. But when we're writing the null hypothesis, it will always have an equals to sign in it. It's going to be equals to, it's going to be less than or equals to, or it may be greater than or equals to. It may or may not be rejected. We have to test it to see. All right, note to self. Keep this thing pushing. All right, what are the signs that contains a null? It always has an equals to sign in it. Keep this thing rolling. The alternative, y'all. It challenges the status quo. Man, Joe only loves you because you got your hedge of protection around it. But wait a minute. But God is saying he is righteous and upright. How could you say that, man? What was that all about? It challenges the status quo. When you're writing the alternative, it will have not equals to, it can be greater than, or it can be less than. It is the opposite of the null hypothesis. Once again, it may or may not be proven. We got to test it to see if it's true or not, y'all. We got to test it. All right. So, true or false? HA may or may not be proven. Please, come on, come on, come on, come on. Please note to self, right? Yes, right? It is true. It may or may not be proven. You cannot make assumptions. You got to test it out. All right, so let's kind of quickly get to this. What are the signs for the alternative hypothesis? Greater than, less than, not equal still. All right, but this is the part I want to wrap up with. And hopefully you can see this concept, and hopefully it would help you to understand how we're actually testing hypothesis testing. We are looking at the claim. So if the claim in the alternative, it is less than 30 gyrations per second, as an example, because you heard less, it is a left-tailed test or a lower-tailed test. Yeah, yeah. All right. We're going to be using a z-stat or a different calculation, the probability value, to determine is it in the rejection zone or is it in the true, the status quo, the historical um, data zone over here. So let's say, for example, we tested and your dot fell right here. We would say reject the null hypothesis. Whatever the claim, whatever the statement is that it's less than 30 gyrations per second, if it fell right here, you would say that we would reject the null hypothesis. The alternative is true. Yeah, yeah. All right. But if your dot were to fall, let's say out here, you would say, nah, man, nah, man, nah, man. Let's say the data showed up right here. You will say no. The alternative is not true. You would do not reject the null hypothesis. The status quo is still the status quo. All right, good, good. Here's another one. All right, in the alternative, you see greater than. It represents a right-tailed test. Man, at this carnival, they're gonna gyrate more than 30 gyrations per second. Yeah, yeah. That will represent a right-tailed test. That is based on the alternative hypothesis. Once again, we're going to use a z-stat or p-value. If your dot falls right here, you'll be like, nah, man, do not reject the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is true. But man, if you tested and your dot fell somewhere out here, you'll say, looky, looky, looky. Reject the null hypothesis. Man, these people are gyrating more than 30 rhythms per second. Yeah, yeah. All right. So if it falls on the outer tips, you will reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, meaning that the alternative claim is true. All right. Keep your head on the swivel. Make sure you understand this concept. All right. Let's say the claim was, man, they're going to gyrate 30 rhythms or gyrations per second. It is going to be, or it differs. It's going to represent two tails, your left tail and your right tail. So if your dot fell right here, you will say the status quo is true. All right, believe the status quo. All right, but if it were to fall right out here, you say, nah, man, don't believe the status quo. It is not within 30 gyrations per second. All right, note to self. So we're going to show you different types of calculations. We're going to show you how to calculate it for known. We're going to show you how to calculate it for unknown. Remember, this is dealing with a t-value, but it follows the same pattern. In the alternative, if it's less than left tail. In the alternative, if it's greater than right tail. In the alternative, if it's not equals to, it represents a two-tailed test. All right. And then when we do the calculation, if your dot falls right here, do not reject. Reject. Yeah, yeah, on this one. Do not reject. Yeah, do not reject. Yeah, yeah. And on this one, reject the no. All right. On this guy, hey, reject the no. Yeah, yeah. So depending on where that dot falls on your number line, is it in that rejection zone or not? If it's in the rejection zone, reject that the null hypothesis is still true. Based on your sample, it ain't no longer true. All right, last but not least, even if you're dealing with proportions, it is the same concept. In the alternative is less than left tail. In the alternative is greater than right tail. In the alternative, not equals to represents a two-tailed test. All right, same thing. We're going to get our calculations. Do not reject. Do not reject. If it were to fall out here, reject that the shell. All right, but okay, reject right here. Do not reject and do not reject. Yeah, yeah. So listen to the claim, and from there you can tell, is it a right tail test? All right. Is it a left tail test? Is it a two tail test based on the claim? So let me test you out this one, and then we can get into our homework for today. All right. How would you write this claim? Which one of these is true? All right. The population mean or average is 30. So let's take this population right here, and we were to do a sample. Of these sample persons right here, it is 30. Does is represent a two-tailed test? Does is represent a left-tailed test? Or does is represent a right-tailed test? Out of all of these hypotheses right here, which one in your mind's eye would be true? If you said that first one right there, you done did it right. Because it is. You did not hear anything less than, which would be this guy. You did not hear anything greater than, which would have been this guy. You heard is or is different. It will represent a two-tailed test. With that said, we are ready to actually put this into practice by going into the homework. All right, you hear the music out there? I don't know if you can hear it. And we're going to get into the homework and see how to put this into practice. Let's go, let's go, let's go. All right, so if you can you open up Cengage and let's get into this, please. All right, so let me get into Cengage here real fast. All right, so what we're looking for is uh, chapters 9. And please be reminded for chapters 9, 10, and 11, there are no exams. But what we will do is the benchmark assignment, all right, in chapters 9, 10, and 11. All right, so if you go to approximately week 8 or 9, you should see your chapters 9 homework. But first off, can you go to the Trello board? In the description below, you will find the Trello link. Please go to the Trello board for my classes. You will see the Trello link under class resources. I'm going to go there. All right, I'm going to grab my Trello link. Mhm. All right, and what you guys are going to see is your Excel templates right here. Once this video is done, you will find the video right here under Excel homework videos. All right, so if you can you please download your chapters 9 Excel's template, please? So I'm going to scroll down, click on this up arrow right here. All right, and I'm going to open up my Excel. All right, please enable it. And please save your Excel to your desktop or wherever you have your BUS352 folder. File save as. All right, I'm going to browse and I'm going to put this, once again, take it out of your downloads or your documents folder, put it somewhere on your desktop. Right, so on my desktop, I have this folder right here created just for BUS352 so that everything is organized under my desktop. Yeah, yeah. I would highly recommend you click on your desktop for my Mac users, go to on my Mac, all right, and you'll find your desktop. Click on your desktop. Please create a folder, BUS352, and drop this file in there. So I'm going to drop it, save it. Perfect. All right. Now that you have that saved, please open up Cengage for chapters 9, please. So go back into Halo. Go back to your calendar. All right, go to week 8 or 9 and scroll down until you get to your chapters 9, right? And we'll open the assignment. All right, open the assignment. And what we're going to do is please create a dual screen. All right, I'm not sure how this is going to work with just having one computer and a small computer, but we'll try to make it do what it do. All right, can you please start off with 9.04? Right, we're going to go with 9.04. I'm going to make this just maybe a tad bit bigger. Perfect. All right. So click through until you see exercise 9.04. Right, click through. Hey, right here, right here, right here. Now, some of you guys do not like word problems. All right, and I get it. All right, but once again, for me, I look where the numbers start and I start from that sentence. But ultimately, what we're listening for is some kind of claim, some kind of statement. All right, in this entire paragraph right here, and I just want you to spot it right off the bat. Look in here and see anything that says less than, greater than, before, after, it is, it differs, it reduces, it increases. Look in this paragraph right here and see if you see any key word. And right off the bat, all right, as I'm looking in here, I see the word reduces, before. This to me would represent a left-tailed test. All right. So in here, right off the bat, all right, before I know what my hypothesis value is, what my average is, I've read this and I see reduces. So I'm going to make the assumption that the claim is less than. All right. So, well, right off here, I see that the mean cost is 240. Please, on your end, put in your mean. That same mean value shows up in your hypotheses, the null and the alternative to the right. So you put 240 twice, 240 for the null and 240 for the alternative. All right. Well, because I saw reduces in the alternative, I am going to put less than. Put your less than symbol in the alternative, please. All right. And then let's test it to see if we're right. Find your less than and check your work. Yay! We did not read the whole thing, but we saw keywords. We want you guys to look out for keywords in the claim. You should hear something less than. You should look for something greater than, increasing, decreasing, or it is or it differs. All right. So now that you have the alternative, can you write the null? The null is the opposite of the alternative, and it includes an equals to sign in it. So what is the opposite of less than? Is it not greater than and equals to? Because it always includes an equals to sign in it. Yeah, yeah. So in this example right here, I will go to this guy and put greater than or equals to, check my work. Let's go. Yeah, yeah. All right. And what I'll allow you guys to do, since this is all multiple choice, just get it right, get it right, get it right. All right. You can read through it and figure it out. All right. So that's the first one. Let's bounce over to the second one. Let's go to 9.07, please. So click through until you find a 9.07. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to make this just a tad bit smaller. All right, same kind of concept, but they're dealing with type 1 and type 2 error. All right, carpet land salesperson's average. This is the historical data. This is why we put this up here. $8,000 per week in sales. Yeah. All right, so 8,000, put it in there. So once again, that same hypothesized value goes twice down here. 8,000, 8,000. Yeah, yeah. So now in this statement right here, in this information that they provide right here, do you see anything that represents a left tail, a right tail, or a two-tailed test? We are looking for the claim. All right. So if I were to look, all right, average sales, give me a second. It is, I'm gonna have to make this a tad bit smaller so I can see it all. Sorry, on your end, it's probably gonna be horrible to see, but let me look. Do you see anything on there that says less than, greater than, two-tailed test? All right, so I'm gonna look, I'm looking. All right, do you see anything? Do you see anything? All right, I so far concludes that the plan increases. Hopefully you can see this on your end, but right here it says increases. So in my mind's eye, this claim is that it's going to increase the average sales per salesperson. So in the alternative, I will put greater than. All right, check your work just to make sure. Outstanding. So right here, I will put greater than. Yeah, yeah. So in the no, this is why we develop our alternatives first. It is based on the claim. In the no, isn't it the opposite of greater than? Wouldn't it be less than and equals to? Put it right in yours, please. Put it right in yours. So less than or equals to. Check your work just to make sure you're good. Yes, sir. All right. And then for the rest of these, it is all multiple choice. Get it right. Well, here's a brief explanation of type 1 and type 2 error. Type 1 error. Remember that dot that fell on the number line that tells us if it is true or not true? Imagine in the number line, it fell in the do not reject zone. You believe that this thing is true. And when you actually make your statement, when you actually make the statement of your results, you actually say that it is false. That is a type 1 error. If your dot fell in the rejection zone and you decided to accept, do not reject the null hypothesis, then that will be a type 2 error. So hopefully you kind of getting a good notion. It is the one line. All right. Whether a type 1, it should say do not reject and you reject it, that's a type 1 error. If it's supposed to be rejected and you do not reject it, that is a type 2 error. All right. So hopefully you guys got that and we can get this going. All right. So just get these right and we should be good to go. All right, let's move on to 9.15, please. All right, so click through until you find it. Hey, 9.15, I'm going to roll right now. And this is where we're going to actually be using our hypothesis testing. Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're going to actually go through this and instead of reading all of this, we're going to start with our numbers and plug in the information that we got. According to the IRS, individuals filing federal income tax returns, all right, prior to March, whenever, all right, received an average refund of this amount in 2018. Do you hear the historical data being provided to you right here? All right. They are receiving, in my case, this amount. This is your hypothesized value. So I'm going to put this is my average refund that the population is getting. So I'm going to put in my number. All right. Let me make that just a tad bit bigger on my end so you guys can actually see where I'm getting my numbers from. All right. So 1055. Good. Then it goes on to say, all right, consider the population of last minute filers who mail their tax returns during the last 5 days, right, of the income tax period. All right, good, good, good. Our researcher, this is the claim, suggests that reason individuals wait until the last 5 days is that on average, these individuals receive lower refund. All right, the claim is lower. So in your mind's eye, the alternative should be less than. All right, so I'm going to put less than in my alternative. Let me see if there's a spot for this. All right, no, I'm going to check my work. Yes, sir. So my null is going to be greater than or equals to. All right, good, good, good. Check my work. All right, good, good, good. So now that I have that, I can now put in my sample data, whatever your sample size. It is a sample of 400, which is good. It is better than 30. Yeah, yeah. All right, here is your sample mean. So their sample mean is 910. Ultimately, what you're doing is testing these two. I'm gonna orangify it so you guys can actually always have a visual of what the test is actually testing. These two numbers right here. You got your sample average and you got your population's average. So the question is, the alternative is that it's going to be less than. If you submit your filing, your taxes, 5 days or less, you're going to get less than average. Yeah, yeah. So is this number statistically overwhelmingly less than this number right here? We got to test it out to see. All right, so what are the numbers that they give us in here? They give us the population standard deviation. So we'll put that down right here. All right. And their alpha value is right here. All right. So they're looking at a rejection zone of 5%. So I would just put down 0.05. Yeah, yeah. Once you put all of that stuff down, in our template, we got all the calculations already calculated for you. If it's a right tail test, it says reject. If it's a left heel test, it is reject. If it is a right tail test, it says do not reject. If it's a two tail test, it says do not reject. All right, this is your test statistic part of the calculation. There's also a proportion or a probability calculations that we're going to be doing. In the probability calculations, they provide you the same exact result. All right. Even though they're using different numbers, they provide you the same exact result. All right. So in here, it is saying, let me see, what is the p-value? All right. Which p-value do I use? All right. Because we're dealing with p-value, all right, and this says less than, this represents the lower tail. I'm going to yellowify this. All right, so you got to understand how to read this. And this is why it's vitally important we understand what the claim is. Is the claim a left tail test? Is the claim a right tail test? Or is the claim a two tail test? In my case, the claim is a left tail or a lower tail test. So let me put in this number at 4 decimal places, 50. All right, I'm going to check my work. Let's see if we are right. Outstanding. All right. So once again, if it was a right tail test, you would use this p-value right here. If it was a two tail test, you would use this p-value right here. All right. You guys can do the work. Get this drop down answer correct. But I want to get to this part right here. All right. Um, what is the critical value of the test statistic? All right. If it's a negative number, put in a negative number. How do you find the critical value? You will see critical value, all right, or T crit, or Z crit, or F crit, or whatever crit. Some kind of critical value is this value right here. Let me yellowify this. All right. And we're going to put in negative 1.6, what's that? 45. Check your work. Make sure you're golden. Where did my check my work go? All right. For some reason, my check my work went away. Give me a second here. Let me see. I'm gonna go quick off of it. That's one. Give me a second. I'm just trying to trigger it back again. All right, my check my work left me on this one. But once again, your critical value should be that value right here. So get it right, get it right, get it right. All right, let's move on to the next one, please. All right, so I'm overseas, so maybe everything is not working as correctly as I would like. All right, please, let's go to 9.19, please. 9.19, click through, bam, 9.19. And once again, this is another problem dealing with the IRS. Submit your taxes, submit your taxes. All right, so on this one, let's see what we got. ABC, all right, and all of this. All right, so let's go through it. All right, according to the IRS, let me make this a little bigger. Taxpayers calling the IRS in 2017 waited 15 minutes on average. Because this is the historical data, this is what we'll put in the hypothesized value right here, 15 minutes. All right, good, good, good. Then it goes on to say, looking at my numbers, suppose a sample of 50. So I'm going to put in a sample of 50. All right. A sample mean, let me see, mean weigh-in time of 13. All right. And once again, I'm going to orangefy these two so you guys can know these are the two that we're testing, this guy and this guy. All right. And my population standard deviation. And okay, my standard deviation wait time is 11 minutes. Okay, we're gonna put 11. All right, my sigma level of significance, 0.05. All right, and I have everything that I need. So I will scroll down in this guy right here. All right, select the correct null hypothesis. All right, so in here, as you guys are reading this, do you see anything less than? Do you see anything greater than? Right off the bat, I see less than right here. All right, so in my alternative, I would say that the U is less than. Yeah, yeah. And once again, I would check my work just to make sure. All right, great. Up here, it is, what's the opposite of less than? Greater than or equals to. In this case, it will be A. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna check my work just to make sure. Right? Good to see that my check my work did not disappear. All right. Then which p-value am I using? Because it was less than, I'm going to be using my lower tail p-value. I'm going to yellowify this. All right. And you will plug in your answer. Free. All right. Check your work. Make sure you're golden. All right. Scroll down. Outstanding. You guys then can answer this question and keep this thing rolling. Good work, good work, good work. So hopefully you're seeing that the claim matters. Is it left tail, right tail, or two-tailed test? And from there, you can tell which p-value to choose. Is it the left tail one or the lower tail one? Is it the right tail one or the upper tail one? Or is it the two-tailed one? All right, let's go to 9.23, please. 9.23. Click through until you find 9.23. Bam. All right. So I'm gonna make this smaller so we can see it holistically. But right off the bat, here is your null, and here is your alternative. In the alternative, it says it's greater than 12. All right. That is your height. The 12 is your hypothesized value. Yeah. Whatever shows up to the right of your hypotheses is your hypothesized value. All right. Good, 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 good. All right. So what is the sample size? My first one is 25. All right. What is my mean? I will plug in my mean, right? 14. All right. And then what is my standard deviation? 4.32. All right. Also, what is my level of significance? For the most part, is going to be 5% or 0.05. All right. Once you have that, you have all the information that you need. All right. So on this first one, all right, on this guy right here, com yep, compute the test statistic. All right. So how do you compute the test statistic? All you're looking for in here, all you're looking for in here is the test statistic. So I'm going to scroll down. Where's my test statistic? Ah, right here. I'm going to yellowfy it. All right, this is your test statistic, and they want two decimal places. You know how to do it. Move it over two decimal places, please. So 2.31, 31. Check your work. Make sure you're good. Yes, sir. All right. These you can get. All right. Now, once again, they're testing your decimal abilities. Good luck with that. So I'll just do this first one so you guys can get a general idea of this. Which p-value am I looking at? Because this says greater than, I'm looking at my p-value in my upper tail. So give me a second. Oh, let me hide this again. All right. We're looking at the p-value in the upper tail. So I'm going to yellowfy this guy right here. All right. And for the p-value, even though it's multiple choice, they want you to test and get this right answer. So the way I do it is I look at, my decimal places, and where do I see my first number? So I see 0.01, the first digit, the first actual number in my data set, in my answer. All right. So it comes after the second decimal place, right? This 0.01. So when I'm doing this drop down, I'm looking at 0.01, and you see how it's in between those two numbers? So start off where that digit is, and then make your selection over here. Hopefully that makes sense. Check your work. Let me make sure that this is right, but I'll tell you, yes, indeed. All right, so just get the rest of these right. But right here, it says the critical value of, right? So what is the critical value? So you're looking for something that says T crit. I'm going to yellowfy this. All right, right here is your critical value, and they want three decimal places. So I'm going to put in 1.711. Check your work. All right, perfect. So the cool part about these templates is that all the calculations are already ready to go. You just have to put in the right information and know where to find the correct information. Yeah, yeah. All right, good work, good work. Let's knock the rest of these out. Let's go to 9.25, please. 9.25. Bam. All right, these are all multiple choice. So just get it right, just get it right. But just so I can set this up right off the bat, you should see that this is a left field test. Here is your hypothesized value. I will plug it in. All right. First, your sample size for the first one is 36. All right. Your mean is Where did I see my mean? 44. All right, for my first one. And then this guy, my standard deviation is 5.2. So what am I really testing? I am testing my samples average. I'm going to orangefy this. And I'm also testing my hypothesized value, this guy right here. So these two right here. So the question is 44 statistically less than 45? All right. So if I scroll down, since this is less than, all right, it's going to be a left-tailed test. For left tail, it says do not reject. So 44 is not statistically less than 45, right? So first of all, which p-value? I'm going to yellowify this guy right here. Which p-value are they talking about? This p-value right here. So you see how it says 0.1. So when I click on this, I will look for anything zero point 0.1. You see 0.1. Look, look, look. All right. So I will click that. And then can it be concluded? What can be concluded? If it says do not reject, it is no. All right, I believe. Let me make sure. Because Cengage sometimes twists things around. Good. So do not, do no, no, do not. All right, get it? If it was reject, it would be yes. All right. So you guys can do the rest of these. If I were you, I would just keep it simple. I would just change my mean and I will change my standard deviation right here. These two numbers right here. So you can see this. I would change this to, instead of 44, I would change it to 43. Is 43 statistically different than 45? All right. And my standard deviation is 4.6. Press enter. I'll scroll down. All right. And once again, what I'm looking at is my p-value. And let me yellowify this one as well. All right. So you see rejected on this one. So you will get your p-value and you will say yes. All right. I'm just going to do the yes part so you can see this. But ultimately, for these drop downs, just get it right. All right. Good work. Good work. Good work. Two more to go. Let's go to 9.34, please. Perfect. All right. So you have regular numbers. Can you plug in these regular numbers? And can you calculate? Let me get this all plugged in here so I don't run out of gas. All right. Can you calculate using these numbers and then see if something is less than, if something is greater than, or if something is based on the claim? All right. So if you would please type in all of these numbers as you see it. All right. We all have different numbers. So take your time. Type in your numbers, please. Right, take your time, type in all your numbers correctly. Slide over because some of you guys may have extra numbers in there. All right, I typed in all of my numbers. Now we can actually make these calculations. How do you find the sample size? How many numbers do you have? So here is your formula. Grab it, copy it, Control C, Command C, and paste it to the right. Double click on your range. It highlights your range's numbers, and then you can select, click and drag it all and press enter. All right, I'm going to maximize this so we can only focus in on this. All right, so here's my formula. I'm going to copy it, Control C, Command C. I'm going to paste it to the right. Double click on the word range. It highlights the range and then drag through. Press enter. Do the same thing for the standard deviation. Copy it, Control C, Command C. Double click, paste, Control V, Command V. Double click in there. There you go. Double click on range, click and drag. All right. So you have your standard deviation, you have your mean, you have your sample size. Now we're looking for our hypothesized value and our alpha value. All right, so let's go into this. Right off the bat, you can see your hypothesized value shows up to the right. It is 2. All right, so what exactly are we testing? Once again, I'm going to orangefy this so you guys can see this so it will make sense to you what you're doing. We're testing this versus this. All right, so I see this number is bigger. So in my mind's eye, it might be a two-tailed test or it might be a right-tailed test. And I see the word right off the bat, differs. Differs represents a two-tailed test. All right, differs or it is. The difference between represents a two-tailed test. All right, what is my alpha value? Look on there. See anywhere where it says an alpha value. All right, we can make the assumption. Oh, it's right here. Alpha significant level of 0.05. We can always make the assumption that it's 0.05 if you don't see it. But for the most part, all right, you can look through your problems or they'll tell you what level of significance they're looking at. What confidence zone are they looking at? Is it 95%? Is it 99%? Is it 90%? It's all based on the researcher and how fine-tuned they want their answers to be. All right. So I'm going to press enter. All right. So on this, because I hear differs, I'm going to put not equals to, all right, and check my work. In the alternative, I put not equals to. Am I right? Yes, sir. It's based on the claim. So for the null, what's the opposite of not equals to? Equals to. Yeah, yeah. All right, good, 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 good. Now, my sample mean, where did I calculate my sample mean? Right here. All right, plug that in. All right. Sample standard deviation, and they want 4 decimal places. Move that thing over, move it over, move it over, move it over. All right, 4 decimal places. All right, I ain't got time to type all of that. I'm going to copy and paste. And I'm going to check my work because I don't want to go too far and I'm doing it wrong. Yes, sir. All right, what is my T value? I'm going to scroll down. All right, my test statistic value is this guy right here. I'm going to yellowfy it. All right, because yellow goes into here. All right, and they want 3 decimal places. Too easy. Move it over. All right, check your work. Yep, it's gone. All right, but this is your t-value. And once again, which p-value am I using? I'm using my p-value for two-tailed. All right, but since these are drop downs, just get it right. Just get it right. Just get it right. Just get it right. All right, let's wrap this up with the last one. Can we go to 9.40, please? 9.40. I'll scroll up. Oh, I think we're missing one. All right, 9.40. Let's go to work, please. 9.40. Perfect, perfect. All right, this one is dealing with proportions. Every time you see percentage, you have to convert it into decimal values. All right, so on this one, all right, excuse me. So on this one, we're going to say last year, 40% of business owners gave a holiday gift. Come on, man. We need more than 40% of business owners to give gifts to their employees. All right, but this is the data, and this is what the data is saying. That is your hypothesized value, 0.40, 40%. All right, good, good, good. Then it goes on to say a survey of business owners conducted this year indicated that 33%, yeesh, less, plan to provide a holiday gift to their employees. All right, so your sample proportion right here is 0.33. Yay! All right, I'm gonna put that right there. And this, I suppose this survey results are based on a sample of 80 business persons. Plug in your numbers. Actually, we all have the same numbers. All right. So first question, how do you find this count for response? Right here. All right. So we know that the proportion is this. We know that the sample size is this. How many out of 80 will give you 33? In other words, all right. So it's a simple formula equals to this times this. If you press enter, you should get a whole number. All right. You think about this. All right. I believe. Yep. Okay, because this is a decimal. Okay, guys, got you. All right. So how many business owners in this survey? All right, round your answer to the nearest whole number. Give me a second. Let me make sure this is 26. Check my work. All right, outstanding. So this was your formula, but they want you to round it to the nearest whole number. Move it over. All right. And if I were you, I would yellowfy it. So if you guys are looking, that will be the formula. Equals to B2 times B5, right? And round it off to the whole number. All right. What is your level of significance? I'm just going to assume it's 0.05. Scroll down. Hey, 0.02. All right. 0.02, basically 2%. They want it really fine-tuned to see if what they're asking is correct or not. All right, good, 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 good. The question then is it a right tail, left tail, or two-tailed test? So I'm looking on here. All right. Do I see anything that says greater than? What I see decreases, decrease. So in my alternative, I'm going to say less than. Check your work just to make sure. Yes. All right. So the null is going to be opposite, greater than or equals to. Outstanding. All right. And we're going to plug in the z value and the p value. All right. So let's first start off with our z value, two decimal places. All right. I'm going to put in this guy right here. Please yellowfy this number right here. Yellowfy it. Here is your test statistic. And which p-value do we use? The left-tailed one. I'm going to document that right now. All right, these two numbers right here. So plug those in, and then we'll test it to see if we're right or not. All right, and then point. All right. All right, might check my work left me on this one. All right, but these two answers should be these two answers right here. And then it says, what is the smallest level of significance for which you should draw a conclusion? All right, out of these three numbers, which one is your smallest? This one is your smallest. All right, so I will put in that same number again, point 0.1. Give me a second. I'm going to put 0.100. All right. If I had my check my work, once again, I'm overseas, so this stuff might not be working as smoothly as I could. But check your work, make sure you get your answers, and that is it. All right. So that is it on hypothesis tested. Can you listen to the claim? Can you determine if this claim is a left tail, a right tail, or a two-tailed test? You can do this. You can listen to the claim, determine which tail it belongs to, and test to see if the claim is true or not true. That is all I got for you for hypothesis testing. But once you get this concept, you should be able to do the remaining of this class, these classes, very easily once you understand the concepts of hypothesis testing. Have a great day. See you later. Bye.